All right, there'll be some music, so I'll start talking.
but but you gotta do in your polite voice.
Good evening. You're listening live to the Two Extreme Horror Show. I'm your host, Rob. With me as my guest is Dr. The Doctor. Are we calling you Dr. Vekman, Dr. Vekman team, or Classic Doctor, or what are we calling you these days?
I mean, you can call me Classic Doctor V, V Classic. I mean, whatever you want to call me, it's fine.
The Classic's kind of sexy.
Yeah.
It's better than Instant Classic because we know you're not that. So, Mandy with Nick Cage, directed and written by Panos Cosmatos something, I forget his name. Um, Peruvian gentleman, I believe, who loves the 80s film. And I have to say, a lot of times I take on a movie that you say, "Oh, I want to watch this. Have you seen it?" I'm like, "Yeah, probably." And once in a blue moon, I haven't. And then you give me, Doctor, the Millennium point of view. This evening, we're switching roles where I said, "Bro, you got to check out Mandy and just sit down. This is an unbelievable film experience." So, actually, I will let you start. What are your initial impressions after soaking this in?
Barely, I had no idea what the heck I just watched. Base. I mean, I kind of knew, but I was like, there's just so many questions that were left unanswered. Like, you got the Black Riders.
Yep.
It's basically. I mean, the movie was visually great. I mean, I love the fact that that it wasn't too gory, but it still had some a story. I mean, my only complaint I would say with this movie was it needed to pick up a little more. It gets slow in some parts, but other than that, it's pretty good. I mean, Nicholas Cage making the battle axe was probably the best part of the movie.
Yeah, that was badass, and the axe looked badass too. It's not just a fire axe or what like that. It's a battle axe. And it looks like it's forged in some heavenly metal. I mean, my God, this thing looks great. Yeah, and that's the thing that I would tell anybody that has not seen this film is that one, it's probably different than any film you've seen before, unless you really like older movies. I would not call it an exploitation movie, although I know some people who've seen it have told me they think it is because of the look and the style. And I'll simply say the only other movie that this director did was that called Beyond the Black Rainbow, and it's exactly very similar in style. He uses the widescreen lens like John Carpenter and a lot of 80s people, tons of lens flare, rich color palette, although in this particular one, I will sit there and say there's two dominant colors. There's blue when you're talking about what I would call love, which is Nick Cage and his girlfriend, his wife, his partner. And then there's red when the bad stuff comes in. So to your point, you talk about demon bikers. Basically, it's a revenge film. This is the way I look at it. This washed out musician wannabe hippie dude in 1983 when this takes place in the middle of nowhere um, sees Nick's girlfriend and basically is like, I want her. So he gets some guys to basically, kidnap her. They dope her up with LSD and like venom from like this black wasp or something. And yeah, it just gets really crazy. And you're like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? And it's very slow, to
Can
your
I
point. Go
can I
ahead.
just make a comment about the guy, the failed rocker, who's supposed to be like the head of the cult?
Hmm.
At first, when I saw a glance him, I'm like, is this Rutger Hauer? Like a younger
Yeah.
Rutger Hauer with long hair.
I
But
think with
like,
the I think with the red, it messes with the that's why I use red lights and strip clubs and whatnot. It messes
yeah,
with the wrinkles and stuff. So yeah, it definitely gives him a creepy, weird look, and he does have that kind of I'm really really high while I talk vibe.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, visually great. I mean, yeah, it is a revenge movie, so you'll enjoy it.
Yeah,
I
the other
mean,
thing I think
it's
too
sad.
is the music.
The music was great. Even the opening intro theme is like a rock song, and it's like it's basically it's like a you're watching a story that took place out of a heavy metal magazine. You know, the comics, the anime and stuff. If you took something like that, this is like your graphic adult story of just a guy avenging his wife.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you were talking to me about right before we launched was, that it was set in the 80s. I'm like, yeah, it definitely feels like it. But Red, which is Nicholas Cage's name, and Mandy, his girlfriend, they live together, and she is what I would call a free spirit, not a hippie, not a free love,
No,
have sex with anything that moves kind of vibe, but just a free spirit, an artist, if you will. And I think what's interesting here is that you kind of don't really know what their age is, but you feel like they've been together for a while. They don't have children. They live in a cabin. He's a logger, so they're up in the mountains, and it's very peaceful. It's very quiet, very tranquil. But she works at like a gas station or someplace or whatever. She's always reading like sci-fi and stuff, and she does like fantasy art, which will be a theme in the movie. But what's cool is that like there's this whole element of whether or not this is real, whether or not it's just a bad acid trip because there's LSD is featured prominently in this, or is it actually diabolical with actual demons coming out of hell. So yeah, this failed biker dude basically sees her, and I think he's awestruck by like just the nature of who she is. It just radiates from her, and she's not what you would call like hot or gorgeous or a pinup model. She's not ugly. She just really
no,
looks like an artist. And Nick Cage, I think, is fabulously cast in this too because, to your point, you were telling me he was like in the 60s, and he could be 35 in this film. The way the character he's
yeah, yeah.
playing. They're not rich people.
Yeah, I'd say like they're both there are probably like in their mid to late 30s or early 40s is what they're going for in this film. Like I said, they're both. He works a little longer by day. She's at home. She's just drawing. She's reading sci-fi novels, and then they're really into like the sci-fi movies and stuff like that. She's got her Black Sabbath shirt on. You know, they're just minding their business and they're peaceful. Like, he even mentioned about maybe like going back, and she's like, "No, we have a perfect life out here. It's our own little hole in the world." It's and it was interesting, like it's how they just did the art on this. Like, the visual effects.
Yeah.
Um, like I said, it was like kind of red hazy. And she started fantasizing. She's reading this book, and then she's not on any drugs or anything, but her mind would open up to stuff. How she's reading the words stuff, and they kind of focus on the words when she's reading,
Yes.
and she'd picture herself, and all of a sudden she's like, how she's walking down this road, and it's just like pitch red. And the thing is that what was really interesting is they were talking about like, well, what's your favorite planet? And she's like, well, I love Jupiter because it's basically like a storm that's been going on for a thousand, a hurricane that's been going on for 1,000 years,
Hmm.
and the eye of the storm is bigger than the Earth itself. So and he says something like, oh, he liked the Venus, because it was the first one to discover it in all importance. But which her talking about Jupiter towards the end, the last shot of the movie is you see him driving off. You see like the Jupiter and the two moons and all that stuff, and it's like, so you're like, what am I watching here?
Yeah, there's this movie. I really liked it in that it gives you a lot of images that kind of are the story. I mean, if you just close your eyes and listen to it, there's not a ton of dialogue, but the music is fantastic. But to your point, when they talk about stuff like Jupiter, you get visions of it later, and so it's not like you see like makeup and bad guys just at the end. You get a pretty well spaced out stuff that's going on, even though it's very I wouldn't say slow paced, although by today's standards it is. I would say it's very deliberately paced, and it's a long movie. It's about 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. And I think this early part, what really helps make the movie be successful, is the fact that you really get. I think for me anyway, I don't know about you. I really felt like, like Nick Cage, Red and Mandy. I think them as a couple, they had a good chemistry where it was believable. They seemed like they're in love, and
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing is you got the sense that they both have had not a hard upbringing. Like, I had to walk 2 miles to snow, every day to work, and all this crap. It was just, you feel like they've had a lot of tough, stressful times. And by stressful, I don't mean, I dropped my coffee, my latte today, my pumpkin spice thing. It's they just either abused sexually, physically, something, where it just seems like you have two people that are a little bit damaged in their own way, whatever it is, and it only hints at it the way they're talking, but somehow they're still able to be whole enough to love each other and carve out, at least for a moment in time, and they've been together for a while, just love and happiness. And I think it's not hokey. I don't think it's like a romance movie or any of this fake kind of crap. It's
No,
something
no.
you feel while watching it interact. It's not stated. It's not, presented to you over the top fashion. It's just very day by day and natural. So you just watch some of the scenes going on. You kind of get a feel for how each one of them is. But like I say, this hippie dude, he's like, man, I gotta have her. But he's got like this biker gang that somehow he's got this hookup with his muscle, and he has his muscle say, okay, I want you to get the gang, and I want you to get me this girl. So this is when it starts getting kind of weird, and it starts turning like a little mystical. It turns a little, alternative. And this is where I think what you and I were saying is it real? What's happening here? Is it bad acid trip? Because you don't think that Red and Mandy are on drugs at this point, but you think anytime you
No.
see any of the hippie guys, they're completely wasted out of their mind, and you're like, oh my God! Not only does this guy believe he's like God or whatever, what the hell drugs are he on? And it's not the '80s slang. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. And this is the
Well,
hardcore trancy stuff, LSD.
you know what really sets us up though is when in the very beginning of the movie when you see him on Nicholas Cage driving home in his Jeep, from like he's got like I think he's got no, he's got a Trailblazer or Jimmy, whatever. Regardless, he's driving home from just been doing logging. And who's on the radio? Ronald Reagan talking about. He's like talking about it's like he's like and talking about how that he thinks that the generation is basically turning around we're coming back together where they're coming more close to God and we're all against the pornography and all that stuff. And that's exactly where he turns it off though. It's like you know because like pornography is a sin, what Reagan was saying, and this movie is like kind of anti that
Yeah, I
as
think
far
I
as the
think that was set up
people
to
I know.
be, not just to make you understand it was in the '80s, but also that was a thing in the '80s. So I think this is a very good way of putting in there for like irony purposes in a way, not funny irony,
Yeah.
but like okay, and it's just setting you up because you just, even though you can tell they're in love, you just know that something bad's going to happen. And this hippie dude, he gets his guy to basically go out to this lake at night, and he's got this weird, it's like a horn. It's like a seashell or something, and he's blowing in it. It sounds really stupid describing it to anybody that hasn't seen this movie, but it's
It
friggin'
sounds like those
creepy as
wooden.
hell, and it sounds weird.
It sounds like when like you see the people the Indians have those little like wooden flutes they do
Yes,
when they do their songs. That's basically what it was, kind of like something like that. And he used it to call these people to come down and
the Black Skulls.
reinforcements. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the
it's
biker
like
gang.
yeah,
Demonic biker gang is how I like to call him.
yeah. And these are like these are what you're like what against basic going back to what Reagan was saying about the degenerates that are the pornography and all that stuff. These are like the embodiment of that. The way these guys are set up, the way they're like I said, they're evil as evil. The one guy's freaking watching porn,
Yeah,
and the video when Nicholas Cage comes up to kill him. It's like what the heck? It's like wow. It's like because he basically remember how he woke up and like some kind of he knocked him out. He tried killing the one writer.
right.
He knocked up. And he's like he's basically waking up. He's handcuffed to the pipe, and this dude's in there. He's just and the guy just turns around. He has like some kind of like baby mask or something like that on his face. Or it's like weird. It's like a face mask, and this it just keeps on. Like it's like what kind of creature is this? It's like it's not a human, and if it is, he's really like and on like
It's tripping.
I don't know tripping because I don't know if at this point like you said like at this point if Nicolas Cage was seeing him like this or if they really like this because I thought that when I originally saw these Black Riders come and these cult guys I think they're tripping on acid.
Yeah, and I
If
wondered
these
that
aren't
too
real there.
because they don't. Yeah, I mean, it's just the location. You can kind of believe what's going on. So, I mean, before it gets to where you're talking about, where he's taking on the bikers, though, the whole point is, I'm gonna back up here a little bit. When he's Black Skulls arrive, these demonic bikers, they each have their own kind of character. And it's hard to describe them, but visually, one of them I think has like this giant metal. I'm trying to watch what I say here because it's something I'd rather you see rather than describe it. He has an interesting
Hmm.
cod piece, is what I'll say. But
Oh yeah,
they all look like they all look like they're Pinhead or out of something like from Clive Barker. But they're creepy as hell looking, and you don't really know if they talk or they just grunt and make sounds. So again, you don't know if they're riders from hell or what. And this is at night, so it's kind of like a pack, though, which makes you think this is a little satanic or something because he offers up one of
yeah,
his bros, as like a payment for it. And so once they kill him, because they kind of like to eat, they're cannibals. So
yeah.
and they like their drugs, so they get the one guy dead. So these guys go to basically kidnap Mandy, and what happens is they take her, they take them both, but like I was saying, this is a really weird thing to watch. They drug her with this LSD, and this like it's like a giant wasp or hornet or something. Like they just make it
In a
prick her in
jar,
the
yeah.
neck. Yeah. So what they're basically do is they're drugging her up, and basically
He
he's
tries to
just
he
going to
just
try to
seduces her.
seduce her by saying, "Hey, God sent me. I'm a great musician, and my purpose here in life is to have love with everybody, including you." And of course, he's got females and other people. So even though he's a
Yeah.
failed musician, he still has, all these groupie
The,
types with him living that lifestyle where
yeah,
they're drugged out, having sex, and he's just wanting to add this special one to them. But the thing that's really ironic in it is that Mandy, despite her drugged, out of her mind stupor, kind of like laughs at
she
him.
let because he had his song playing in the background. He's like, "You wrote this music, basically. Like, you wrote this," and she starts just laughing. He's like, and he's like, it's embarrassed because he's standing there nude as it is. He took his robe off. He's standing there, and she just starts laughing, and like, and he's like, and his lackeys are looking. He's like, "Don't look at me! Don't look at me!" He's all embarrassed.
Yeah,
So and he decides, and he basically decides, take her outside, the being bag or a sleeping bag, hold her on, tie it up over a tree. And meanwhile, Nicholas Cage out there in his underwear and t-shirt, barbed wired wrapped to a tree, so he can't get out. He's got wire around his wrists and then
yeah.
around
This
and
this is the
his
most
mouth.
disturbing scene in the movie to me. What you're getting
Uh
ready to describe.
yeah, it's like, and he's sitting there watching, like, and they're doing this, and he's like, "What the fuck's going on?" It's like, dude, let us go, and he knows his wife's in there,
Yep.
and they light the baby bag on fire, and she just goes up in flames, and he's sitting there watching. He's just going
They
crazy. He's like,
burn her ass in front of her. I mean, and it's disgusting when you
yeah,
watch this. You're like,
uh,
holy crap, the way it's done and the way it's filmed, you're like,
yeah.
man, this is brutal.
And then they leave. They leave. Or first they stab him in the gut, on the side,
Yep.
with the blade, and then they leave him basically to die. He passes out. He wakes up, and then he's able to slide his wrist out through the barbed wire. I'm watching, like, oh, he's gonna rip his flesh off or something like this. He's gonna, but he manages to so carefully get it out and then untie himself. And then he goes over to, like, the where the sleeping bag was, the ashes was left of the fire. You see her skull there, and the wind just kind of blows away, and just blows space. The bones like ashes, just kind of blows away, dust, like in the dust in the wind.
Yeah.
It's like, man, it's like this is like really messed up. It's like, wow. So he goes in, he crawls inside, he goes to the bathroom.
This is the famous
He,
bathroom scene. If you've not seen it, go
yeah,
see it.
oh, it's and he just grabs a bottle of alcohol, vodka, starts drinking. He's screaming, crying. He's just yelling, and he's looking in the mirror. He's like, ah, he's yelling, and then he drinks like, some more. He's screaming some more. He's crying. He's pouring down his wrist and stuff.
He's in his tidy
And
whities and it's really awful
yes,
80s looking small
yeah,
bathroom. Oh, yeah, and he just loses it.
yeah, yeah. He's got the tiger T-shirt on.
Yeah. I mean, it's 80s kind of clothes, the long sleeve kind of goofy
Yeah,
print
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. So, but man, it's like just him going crazy. It's like I'm waiting for the Nicholas Cage memes to start going with this one because they always make fun of him, like, whenever he does this stuff. But yeah, it's like, what it's believable. He just watched his wife burn to death,
Yeah, so what
and
are you
hell,
going
they
to
held
do?
his skull in ashes.
You're
He's
going to lose
mentally
it.
snapping,
Yeah.
and well, he wants revenge. He finally, he passes out on the bathroom floor, and he gets up. Next thing you know, you see him driving his truck over to this
His old buddy,
RV park. Yeah, little buddy, and he's like, because
Carruthers.
what did he call it? The crossbow he was going to get.
Well, it's the Reaper.
the Reaper, because
Because you
that's what his
name
wife said.
your specific weapons, the ones that are important to
Well,
you.
yeah, well, and that's, I mean, remember his wife said that to the guy, the cult. He's like, the Reaper's gonna get you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, like I say, there's not necessarily a lot of lines in a movie, but the ones that are in here, they have that double meaning, and it's not the stupid little double entendre, goofy stuff like we talk about with police squad movies. This is stuff that you go back and you watch it again, you're like, holy crap, this has more meaning than I thought. So when you watch it a second or
Yeah,
third time, you're like, oh, it's coming. And then you wonder to yourself because, like I say, it's only hinted that they both had like maybe some sort of troubled past or difficult thing in there. He's got his best buddy, who's Bill Duke, by the way, and just a great little
yeah,
scene there, who's holding his stuff
yeah.
in case he ever needs it. So you get the feeling that he knew at some point he was going to have to summon his old
He
self
makes
in a
it.
way.
Was he a hitman before this? And it's like, you don't know. It's like, and it's, you get that feeling like, well, he's just the first time he's gone and killed something. You know, he's like, and the guy's like, he's like, you're gonna need these. Jordan, he gives him the arrows, still tip arrows, like, basically go right through bone. And he's like, there's only one condition if you take these, put them to good use. And so, so he's in his truck, like I said, and he's stalking the bikers. So obviously, and I'm at this point, I don't think he's drunk anymore. So maybe these are just really just fucked up people, and maybe they're wearing the skin from their corpses that they kill. I don't know. That's why they're so disgusting looking.
Well, what to kind of, I'm not going to say this will answer what you're saying because I think at this point here, you realize, okay, the movie's getting close to ending. It's getting ready to go in its third act. So what is going to happen? Well, you don't really know too much more about his past. You have an idea that's troubled, so you know that he's going to attempt revenge. But the only real plot that you get here is his buddy, the Bill Duke guy, Carruthers, is basically saying, "Hey, look, these dudes you're after, the Black Skulls, they're bad mofo's. They got a bad batch of LSD because they're drug couriers. So we don't know who or from what, but that LSD fried their brain, and they do this. They go around and kill people and eat them, and they just said it's been going on for a little while, and it's just nasty. You want to stay away. You're probably not gonna survive." But
Yeah,
this is where to mention what we were talking about offline, where he forges the battle axe, which is just
yeah,
badass
yeah.
looking. So he's got his battle axe, which I don't remember if it had a name, and he's got his crossbow reaper with him. And to your point, this is where he goes to find them. And yeah, it's weird because up to this point you're going, yeah, in real life they're not demons, but the way this movie is presented, and even though LSD
The
is
way it's
probably
all
the
red.
convenient thing, yeah, and you see red whenever you see the bad guys, and violence about to happen. I mean, everything is red. It's like a red lens comes on.
Red
It's
haze, basically. Yeah, yeah.
it's so
Like,
striking. Yeah, but
um,
go ahead.
yeah, they really want to make this movie like a hellish nightmare. So that's why it's in the red haze.
Yeah.
Uh, but also, I mean, also, but also is red also ties in with Jupiter. So
I sense a
it's
theme.
so
Color of War.
so no, but like, and the thing is that when he's hunting this guy, he lets the one dude go, the one biker go to get ahead, and he shoots the other one with the arrow through the back of the neck. So it comes out, and the dude just pulls it out. So I'm wondering right here. I'm like, is he able to do it because maybe because the LSD fried his brain, or because remember drugs like. Sometimes it hits like cops like 6 or 5, 10 times to put a guy down who's high on some kind of
Oh yeah,
PCP or
LSD,
something.
Flocka, any of that kind of
Yeah, also
stuff.
yeah, because
Oh, it's
yeah.
nasty. Yeah. Oh,
So
punch through
so
glass. Oh, that's not easy to do.
but the thing is that like well this is a perfect example. So what happened? He shot the arrow. The guy felt the bike. The only problem is that the dude didn't die.
Yeah.
You know. So and again that's where he gets knocked out. The guy goes after and gets knocked out.
Well, this
What?
is this is the part where he's going up the boss food chain, as I always like to describe, where he's going after the
Yeah,
three
yeah,
biker
yeah,
dudes.
yeah.
He'd gotten captured to your point, but after he whacks this dude and he gets his gear, he's like, "All right, one down, two to go." I mean, he's just thinking this, and you're watching the whole time. There's no talking for the most part, but he's just like,
No,
you know what? I'm effed up. I'm hurt. I'm cut. I'm stabbed. I'm bleeding. Let's rock and roll. And he just friggin' goes to town snorting cocaine and taking all this bad batch of LSD himself. So he just starts hallucinating, but he just knows that, hey, this is the thing I need to just power me through all this. So you're going, I wonder
yeah.
if the rest of this is also like, a bad LSD trip.
He's also seeing this, and it's weird is that every time he gets knocked out, he sees his wife.
Yeah.
Like and how they do this, they show it like in animation
Yes.
drawing.
And it's cool
It's like
anime
it's like
too.
as I said, this brings me back to the movies like Heavy Metal 2000 and Heavy Metal.
Hmm.
This seems like this is a tale stripped right off from one of those pages of that those that publishing group, like something they would do. Um, with the rock and roll music and just the blood flying everywhere, and just like it's just like crazy. It's like I kind of want to watch it again. It's like,
It is. It's definitely an experience. I mean, we're actually pretty much at the end of the movie. I mean, and bottom line is he has a vision of this like radio tower or something where it's like in an
yep.
area because he's a logger, so he's on a mountain. So they also do mining around there too. So there's a scene which is kind of interesting where, and I'm just assuming that this guy who made the batch of LSD, the chemist, he's got like his own lab, and he walks in there, and he kind of turns around, and the chemist is looking at him. He's like, "Oh, they must have done you wrong," and he's like, he knows that this guy's out for blood, so he just like tells him where the bad guy is. But for some reason, there's the thing I like in here is that there's a
Oh, his
cage
voice.
that has this giant tiger in there, and you're like, man, this guy's just experiment with all sorts of stuff to try to get the ultimate trip, and you're like, they probably don't need to have it in there, but it was just weird, and it just hints at something else that
Well,
never gets explained, and that's what's awesome. This movie has a lot
well,
of that in it.
remember it. Just throw back to his Tiger shirt.
True,
It could
true.
be it could be something to that because Nicholas Cage is a tiger. He's caged, but he's getting ready to pounce.
Yeah.
You know, it's because like you said, like they try to tap into the rage and all that stuff. And all here's he's got a tiger in there. And that's what's more violent and gruesome than a freaking tiger going around mauling people.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a scene where he's kind of like looking down at this church, and it's like one of these triangle tip churches or whatever, and it's in a quarry, so it's kind
Oh
of
yeah.
plain Jane
It
around it.
looked was that an abandoned church
I
or
think
did
they
they make it
constructed it
themselves?
there themselves to make it because they actually mined, into the mountains there for, to have be where they reside, because this is where he actually kills the guy he didn't kill and the other dude, and then he has the big chainsaw fight with the third
Oh, dude,
Black
that
Skull.
was
Though, go ahead.
that was crazy. Yeah, that I had not expected the chainsaw. I'm like, is that the little chainsaw? And there's a huge chainsaw.
Uh
It's
huh.
just like I was like, this is like getting crazy. It's like I feel like I'm watching Ash versus Evil Dead,
But not funny. That's the
but
beauty
not
of it.
funny though. It was more serious. Yes.
Yeah, and it's perfect. You're like Nick Cage, chainsaw, fighting it out with these guys and their LSD bikers. You're like, take my money. I mean, why is it so difficult to just come up with something like it? You don't necessarily even need, backgrounds of everybody. You just need enough to know of a makeshift story. And this is as simple as it gets. It's revenge, and he's probably going to be successful, even though he lost his
Oh
woman,
yeah.
whatever that means. But he goes
Well,
underneath the church. He whacks the head off the main chick, the older one. That's the main dude squeeze because he's got a few of them there. And he takes you don't see this, but he takes her head, and he goes, this loser, pathetic wannabe musician, supposedly hippie cult leader, and he just kind of like goads him with rolling out her head or whatever, and then he just
you see,
effing crushes his
and
skull, and that's
the
it.
guy, yeah, like, hey, it's funny because he's like he sees like the guy Calder is like he sees a head bounce. He's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It's like he was not expecting. He's like everything is mine, guys. Everything's mine. You can you're nothing. It's like you should be worshiping me. He's like, and he put and like, he's gonna and Nicholas Cage is going on the ground. He's like it's like. He's trying to plead, and at first he's trying to plead with them, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you," and it's like, yeah, he said he pushes his skull, and like, it just the eye pops out,
Yeah,
both the eyes pop out
it's
because I'm like,
graphic.
man, what threw me out is he killed everybody in the cult. That was except for the girl,
Yeah, I
the
don't I
one.
don't know what to make of that, to be honest with you. I don't he kind of let one person not, and I don't know why, and I couldn't remember if this other person was significantly portrayed in an earlier
Uh,
scene and there was a reason why not to. I'd have to go back
well,
specifically and look for that. That's the way I
the
felt.
only,
I noticed that
so
too.
the only scene she was in there is was with the older lady that the right hand woman that was jealous of his wife Mandy from the cult leader.
I,
She was in there when they're drugging his wife, and she was in there with the older lady, and then she and she didn't really do anything to her at all.
It might be that,
Um,
and, you know, if you think of this as in a religious context, maybe as an avenging angel, he sensed that maybe she wasn't there of
and
her
since
own will and let her go. You know,
yeah,
I mean, because you could
because she
probably
was
look at this in a religious thing and get that.
well, you bring up that scene, maybe she wasn't there because of her free will. Because when he killed the pervert gold guy, she had the battle axe through the back of his skull. He was, she's, and then you see a single tear run through her eye, and from her eye, and it's basically you realize that she's free, she can go leave.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that's probably what I was thinking.
Well, the last scene here basically is, he watches the place burn and he gets in his car to drive away, and he's having, hallucinations, let's say, or visions of Mandy in the car with him as he's driving off. But then as he's driving off, the world kind of turns and looks really like that anime kind of way you were describing it too, the stuff that she'd
Yeah.
been hallucinating with during the course of the movie and this. So it's like, well, did he die? And now has he met her in heaven? We really don't know. So, if you just watch it and you don't really put any
Well,
layers on it, you might just think this is kind of whatever. It's a Nick Cage gore fest. I would say there's not a lot of gore, but what gore's in here is just done really, really good. It's a revenge
well,
film that you can look at in a couple different ways, and it's brutal to watch. It's awesome.
the way I think it is that maybe her soul was trapped because when he first saw her, you saw her, and then her face was kind of in the first animation they saw when he passed out.
Hmm.
He saw her, he turned around, and then she just
The face
decomposed,
melted. Yeah.
yeah, and all stuff. So now, as is, you see as you through the other animation, you see her kind of in the ocean, and she's kind of there, she's nude and all whatever for a reason, and she's at and so it inspires him to wake up and stuff. And then you see it now. You see her, the ghost of her in the jeep as he's driving, or truck he's driving away after he's killed everybody.
Hmm.
She kind of smiles him, and then she fades away. I almost maybe she passed on, moved on because he avenged her.
Yeah, and you don't know if it's that old thing of, oh, it's the ghost helping you out because, or sending you clues along your path. Not as a guardian angel per se, although some could look at it maybe
No,
even that way
no,
too, but maybe just a ghost, hey, finish what you need to do so we can pass on or you can pass on. So you really don't know. And that's the one thing I really, really love about this film is one, and as we're finishing up here, the couple things Undead Quinn put in there, I definitely want to call it on. The score is absolutely friggin' amazing. Fantastic. But then, Undead also says, I like the first viewing, felt like it was a trip through hell. Yes, I agree. And to me, when you think of it on the surface, it's not really a complicated film. There's not a lot going on, there's not a lot of dialogue. It's something that you watch. And it harkens back to a time to me when you're sitting there watching it, you're just going, yeah, I just want to watch it. I don't have to have a lot of dialogue to understand. But then not only is it a pleasure to watch, like I say, you could look at it in terms of a religious thing. You could look at it in terms of a drug thing, a filter. You could look at it in terms of a spiritual thing that has nothing to do with religion, maybe like nature itself, fire consuming you and return to nature and all that sort of thing. You could look at it as just people becoming who they are naturally. He goes back to being a killer because that's what he needs to do. Um, you could look at it as just dying and going to heaven, I guess, in a way. And I won't say reincarnation, but I just wonder with the way this film is made if the director really made it to be that way or if he's just damn good enough to do it. And he's only done two films, so I think this film's great. I love it. I really, really like his first one called Beyond the Black Rainbow, which I mentioned a year ago with Angleteen as we're reviewing some stuff for Halloween. We may have that posted. We'll probably review that here at some time soon. But to me, that one is even trippier because it's his first one. It's a bit more experimental. Both of these are fantastic films. But for me, must watch. That's why we reviewed it. So, Doctor, let me leave the last bit of talking for you.
I just want to say this movie is like I said, the visually, it's just appeasing. The soundtrack really helps it out too. It's not and when I say soundtrack, I don't mean like it's not like it's 80s hits and all this different rock. No, it's not. This is actually these songs were just made up for this movie, and they fit. Um, just the whole feel, like it's 1980, it's like it's 81 or 1983.
83. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just the whole feeling of back then, because there were loggers back then. There were people who wanted to live out and all away from society. There were people like that. There weren't necessarily hippies. It's And this kind of feel is this different? Isn't your normal slasher or horror slasher thing movie?
Now I
It's
joke
not like
always.
it's yeah, it's not sleepaway camp. No, it's not like that.
Yeah, it's not a goof.
This is something like it felt this felt more like a serious horror movie, a serious This wasn't like like you said like you're gonna see a bunch of nudity and all that stuff, it's like just some guy going to aimlessly killing. No, this actually had a plot. Um, Good guy wins at the end. I mean, great. You know, you said like my only thing with problem was this that halfway through the movie, I kind of felt like it could have sped up a little more,
Hmm.
just a little bit. But other than that, great story,
Yeah, yeah,
great music, great visual. I love the fact it's all red.
yeah,
It really sets a mood. If it wouldn't have been in red, it wouldn't. This movie would just suck. I
yeah.
really
And
hope
and
so.
Beyond the Black Rainbows got similar themes and interesting things going along
And
with it
dude,
too. So I'd
dude,
recommend that.
and Nicholas Cage with a dude. It's Nicholas Cage going crazy with the battle axe and a chainsaw. What more can you want?
Yeah, I mean, and if you're an investor and somebody came to you and said, Nicolas Cage, battle axe fight, chainsaw fight, LSD hippie cult, okay, take my money. Just like me as a watcher, take my money. Yeah, go watch it. Go see it. This movie's definitely extreme. It's going in my Extreme Hall of Fame. Can't wait to review Beyond a Black Rainbow. That's another phenomenal one too. But Mandy, go see it if you haven't, guys. For myself, for Doctor, I want to thank you guys for showing Time Traveler. I don't think I've seen you in chat before. If you have been, great. We got a bunch of stuff in there. Let us know if there's something you want to cover. Appreciate you coming in. That's a great name, too, by the way. As well as the Needle Movers Society. Yo. Yes, Mandy. Check it out. Stay extreme.
Cheers,
Toodles.
guys.
Good night, everybody.